Welcome to the West Wing Week, your guide to everything that's happening at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, and extending into the heartland, the Rockies, the Big Apple, and south of the border for an action-packed week of travel with the President and Vice President. It's September 20th to the 26th, or 4244. On Friday, the President traveled to the Kansas City, Missouri Ford Motor Company's stamping plant, a plant that recently had to bring on a shift of 900 workers to keep up with the rising demand for the new F-150 pickup truck. 5 years ago, plants like this one were closing their doors. The auto industry was flatlining, and GM and Chrysler were about to go bankrupt. But this president refused to let it happen. Meanwhile, in Mexico City, the vice president was leading a diplomatic delegation to meet with leaders of Mexico's government, where they would discuss strategic economic and commercial priorities central to promoting mutual economic growth, job creation, and global competitiveness. Later, the vice president traveled to Los Pinos, the official residence and office of the president of Mexico, Enrique Peña Nieto, where the two met one-on-one, held a bilateral meeting, and delivered joint statements to the press. On Saturday night, the president and first lady attended the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation's Phoenix Awards Dinner, part of the CBC's annual conference in Washington, D.C. On Sunday, the president spoke at a memorial service to honor the victims of the Navy Yard shooting and to thank first responders for their heroic efforts that saved lives.
We come together as a grateful nation to honor your loved ones, to grieve with you, and to offer, as best we can, some solace and some comfort.
On Monday, in the thin air above Colorado, Vice President Biden and FEMA Administrator Craig Fugate took an aerial survey of the devastating flood damage that parts of Colorado have sustained this month. They touched down in the town of Greeley to spend time with volunteers and flood victims at a FEMA disaster recovery center, where the vice president spoke about what he had seen.
We were in the air about an hour, touring the devastation, and it is devastation. The stories that I've heard in here and from the gentleman standing behind me about the sacrifices individuals have made, about the sense of community, about how people pull together is pretty amazing, but not at all surprising.
Meanwhile, the president was in New York City for the United Nations General Assembly, where he met with Nigerian President Goodluck Jonathan, and then leaders from around the world for a high-level meeting on supporting civil society.
I want to affirm that over the long run, we will all be better off if that small shopkeeper or that small farmer or that young student or that disabled person or that gay or lesbian person or that ethnic minority or that religious minority, if they have a voice and their dignity is respected. That's what will preserve our dignity, and that's what will ensure our security over the long term.
On Tuesday, the President and First Lady arrived at the United Nations for the President's annual address to the Assembly, where he spoke about the U.S. national interest in actively engaging nations around the globe to promote a more just and peaceful world.
The question is whether we possess the wisdom and the courage, as nation states and members of an international community, to squarely meet those challenges. Whether the United Nations can meet the tests of our time.
The president then convened two bilateral meetings, first with the president of Lebanon and then with the president of the Palestinian Authority, before traveling across town to the Clinton Global Initiative's annual meeting. He joined both Clintons before sitting down for a conversation with the 42nd President of the United States for a conversation about the benefits and future of healthcare reform in America and access to healthcare around the globe.
What we're saying to people is, look, just go to the website yourself. Go to healthcare.gov. Take a look at whether this is a good deal or not. Make your own decision about whether this is good for you.
On Thursday, the president traveled to Largo, Maryland, where he visited Prince George's Community College. Who knew Prince George was such a supporter of higher education? Before a gathering of students, faculty, and staff in the Novak Fieldhouse, the president spoke on the Affordable Care Act.
In the United States of America, health care is not a privilege for the fortunate few, it is a right. And I knew that if we didn't do something about our unfair and inefficient healthcare system, it would keep driving up our deficits, it would keep burdening our businesses, it would keep hurting our families, and it would keep holding back economic growth. That's why we took on a broken healthcare system. That's why, with the help of folks like Steny and Ben and Donna, we got it through Congress. That's why we've been implementing it. That's why we are going to see it through. The Affordable Care Act is here.
To find out more information on any of these wide-ranging worldly topics or to see complete videos of these events, go to whitehouse.gov. And thanks again for checking out your West Wing Week.
Show me your swing. Show me your swing, Nico.
Oh, that's a nice looking swing right there. So you're watching, is the curveball coming? Boom! That's gone, man. That is gone. I like
It's
that.
Olympics about 24/7.
Absolutely.
Thanks for
You
saying
doing
that. You doing good, Nico?
All right, buddy.